Welcome back, board, and welcome department heads. We are back from recess. We had an excellent presentation this morning from the League of Municipalities, and grateful for that. And this afternoon on our agenda, item G is expectations of, beginning with expectations of strategic planning. Strategic planning is so important for any organization, any city, any government, and this is something that we do every year. And so I'm looking forward to this discussion from our city manager, Bonnie Therian.
Being here, can you hear okay? Good. Thank you all for being here and spending, God, we've spent a lot of time together this week at the board. I just wanted to start off by saying what's important to me is quality. So if this takes longer than we think today, I would rather we adjourn and finish it up at another time, because it's so important that we receive all your input and that you have your questions answered. So I just want to put that out there first. Ms. Kate, if you can move along. I guess the first thing I want to put up there is a lot of people go, why bother even doing this? And the strategic plan certainly helps the staff and myself, because it really develops for all of you and for the citizens, where's our energy going to go, where's our resources going to go, where's tax dollars going to go, and then it will help us develop a vision for future years, for the upcoming years. And I think, and I feel strongly, it gives the staff and I a lot of guidance so that we know how to put this budget together. You guys are very, very attuned to the public, paying attention to what's happening and being transparent. So this is a great device to be able to show that on our website and social media, that this is a way to communicate what our future is to the citizens. It prioritizes the goals for the staff and I to get going on the budget, as I mentioned. It also decides how those tax dollars are going to be spent and used for evaluation purposes, not only for the city manager, but it helps me set up goals for the staff. So that's very, very important. In the past, I have heard that the staff felt they didn't get a lot out of you guys. They felt that they didn't get direction off the board. One thing I want to say is, in my 30 years of working, I've had city councils that don't really want to do this. So guess who sets up the goals and sets the strategic plan for the city? The city manager and the staff. That is not what you want. That's not what I want to do. You're the policymakers, you're the visionaries, so it's very important that you take on that role and give us what we do to bring you back the budget that, you know, is really what you're looking for. So I don't want to do that. You guys can do it. And that's what you're going to be doing today. And in fact, that's what Vicki covered a lot in this morning's meeting, was it's one of your primary goals. So what I've done, I thought the best way to start off is to ask Melanie to come up and give you an overview of the current budget. After this morning's meeting, I emailed her and I said, you know what you could do first for everybody is explain how to read the budget. So she is going to go over that, because governmental financial sheets are not the easiest to understand. So Melanie, you're on. Thank you.
Okay. So you want to put the slide up? Oh, wow. It's kind of small. Does the board have copies of these?
No.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, first I'm going to just explain the time period and those columns up on that screen. So when you get one of these, there is a line underneath my name up there. It says User M. Trexler, if you see that. It says period, and this one is 0606. So this is the 6th period, which is December. Our first period is July. Our last period is June, which is 12. So we have 12 months, okay? So I can run this report for period 1 through 6, 1 through 3. So it would be, you know, the first through the third period, or I can run it 1 through 12. And what that means, that in the column that says period amount, that is the dollar amount that represents that period. So in this case, this is only for the December dollars spent in that period amount column, okay? The end balance is actually year-to-date, which would be the 6 months total spent, okay? That first column, of course, is our annual budget. You understand those? Any questions about those? The annual budget's the first column. Second column is the period amount, which in this case is December. The next column is year-to-date for the 6 months. The variance is the difference between the year-to-date and the budget. The encumbered amount are open POs, and that encumbers the dollars and adds to the year-end balance, or the end balance there, the 6-month period balance, plus the encumbered amount subtracted from the budget becomes what's available. Okay? And then the last column, the available percent, is just the available amount divided by the budget. And so we're at our 6 months, and the goal should be around 50%. However, you have to keep in mind that a lot of expenses are paid annually in July, like insurance. Our property and liability insurance and our workers' comp is all paid in July.
Is there questions on that? Because I thought I saw a couple faces were like, "Ugh."
Right.
Because under, I think it says contracts, if I'm reading across correctly, we paid $23,000 just in that 1 month. So we couldn't just figure that the next 5 months we're going to do 23, 23, 23. You just know it's going to come out to about 100,000.
Well, I mean, that's the budget. That was what was set aside out of our revenues for contract services.
Okay.
I mean, sometimes, well, this the very first one here is the board budget, or, for our general fund. And contract services is usually a little more than what we normally have, because we sometimes have unforeseen engineering cost or attorney fees or some other fee that might pop up that we need to have a little extra money for.
So when we're budgeting for next year, do we have like an average of how much we often go over, so we actually can budget the right amount?
Yes, usually the budget spreadsheets will have 2-3 years of actual numbers on there.
Okay.
And the staff comes up with the amount that they want to recommend, to bring to the board for that dollar amount.
All right. Thank you.
I noticed, did you have a question before? But not the prime, okay.
Okay, well, let's see, was there anything else on that? No, that was it. Okay, so if you want to go to the next slide, which was administration, and I know this is really hard, and there was a question about why was the administration budget already used at 70% or only 30% available. Well, we budgeted for HR director in finance, but her salary has been switched over to admin. So we would have to do a budget amendment to move that money from finance to admin. So that is primarily why there's a huge difference there. Okay? So we've had some problems with our payroll third-party processors last year. You know, we switched mid-year from Prime Pay to Paylocity, and we're still struggling a little bit with Paylocity in generating a general ledger interface to our budget. I mean, it's just been a long process, and I mean, as of today, Brandon is still trying to work through some issues with them. So it's been very hard. The entries in here have been manually generated by myself and Brandon, but hopefully we'll get that squared away here in the next few weeks. Yeah, it's been very cumbersome, so. Not an easy task to switch payroll.
What brought about the switch?
Prime Pay failed in many areas. They just never really understood the complexities of our payroll. Governmental payroll is quite difficult when you've got so many departments, and especially with our public works, where we have a group of men that are divided between departments. You know, our streets is divided between streets and water and sewer, or mainly sewer. So, I mean, it becomes a task.
Is the new vendor, I mean, obviously you just talked about the problems you're having, but I mean, overall, is the new vendor doing better? Is it a better process, you think?
They are, and they have a few more governmental units under their belt than what Prime Pay had. So, City of Leland uses them. We're probably will take a day trip or a few hours down to Leland and visit with their payroll department, you know, to see if we can iron out any more of our issues. But one of the biggest thing about Prime Pay is they could not generate the report needed to do the North Carolina retirement report, yeah, or interface, uploading that into Orbit online. And Paylocity has done that.
The other comment I'd like to make, and it's just an observation that I just need to study more, though, is it seems like we have a lot of software to do different things, and I'm used to where you have a major software, and it does almost everything. You know, it'll do payroll, it'll do budgeting, it will do, and so instead of having to go from, you know, what's it called, the purchasing one,
Springbrook?
Springbrook to Primelocity, you know, and it's like, why don't we just have one?
Well,
So,
Bonnie, we were using Springbrook for our payroll, but they have not updated that to allow the electronic filing. It would not generate our quarterly 941 report. We were doing that manually.
Right, but I meant there's products like Munis that
Right.
does it all.
Yeah.
And I really want to take a look at that because I think it gets to be a pain for the staff. I've used Munis for a number of years. It does the budgeting, it does everything, it makes it easy. It gets it off of you and onto the department heads to do those budgets. And but we got to take a look at the pros and cons, which I'll have for you at the budget time.
Right. It's not easy. I mean, Springbrook was purchased before I came on board with the city, so it was already purchased. I implemented it to the best of our ability, you know, and have used it. It's served us well so far with our utility billing. It will interface with MyNet and our meter reading system if we can get the stuff in the field to work now. It's you know, it's 6 years old and it's aged and needs attention, and so, you know, so we'll get there. Again, I mean, when you go into automatic meter reading, you have to know that in 5, 6, 7 years, you've got to almost go through the process of replacing everything. You know, when you put it all in at one time, then you're going to expect it to start failing at the same time. I mean, that's just the expectation of being underwater and in sand. So, I mean, it's hard. It makes it hard on the ladies up front, our billing clerk, you know, and the guys in the field. So it's just going to be a process. Yes, and we do have lots of software. I'd love to see us have just one piece of software. It is painful switching software. It's very time consuming. Yes, I mean, it took us over a year to implement Springbrook. We did it in stages. So, but we can do it. So I think that answers your question that I had about administration and why the wages were off on that one. Anybody have any other questions specifically? I mean, I guess I could just look at the pages. Let's see, so there were some line items in the budget throughout that almost every single one of them are over budget. And one of those is vehicle supplies. Well, fuel, that line is mainly fuel and tires. Angie budgeted in the encumbered column a year's worth there. So she basically, she looked back at last year or, invoices and took the highest number and multiplied it times 12 to come up with an annual PO to keep posting invoices again so that we didn't have to keep doing new POs every single invoice, okay? So she's over budgeted a little bit in that encumbered column. But I will say our fuel cost, and I think all the department heads will agree, that fuel cost has probably increased at least 30 to 40%. Wouldn't you say? Anybody? So yeah, it's increased a lot. And, our fleet is fairly new, so we're replacing tires now. It's been a couple of years, so a lot of them are replacing tires that we didn't have last year. So there's been an uptick in vehicle supply expense. I think there was, Tom, I'm gonna have to ask you, did we have part-time people in streets back in July? So I'm gonna have to check that coding on that, because I don't know, I didn't have time to go back and look, so there's a miscoding there on that. And the streets department showed a part-time $3,200, I think. So we'll check that out. And so there's fluctuations in the payroll expenses, the retirement, the health insurance. So we budget, a certain number of people for 12 months. Well, if we don't hire them until September, then, our expense is going to look a little less than the budget or, so that's why there's not a same number every month. And then when someone new is hired, it's 30 days before they get on our health insurance. So there could be some surpluses in some of the departments that had new hires. And pretty much. I mean, it's it depends on, I guess, who they go with, but, our policy is with med costs through the North Carolina League of Municipalities, and I'm not sure if that's their rule or if it was our rule, but it's been the rule since I've been here that I know of. We could investigate changing that. I mean, is there any other questions? Did anyone else see anything in the budget? Fire department's budget is a little tight. I don't know, Ralph, do you want to speak about your budget?
We get to the fire department. And just so you know, Battalion Chief Ralph is helping us out because Chief Drew's off today. So he will be an expert at that. So in the fire department, they hired those guys, a group of guys, almost on the same day. Is that right? Yeah. So, yeah. And there's a number of them that did not take our insurance, so
there'll be some under budget items in those kind of situations. I think the only last question, Karen, that I had from your list was about the electric. But that, there again, that's where Angie over budgeted in the encumbered column. Yeah, I don't foresee a problem with it, but we'll keep a look on that to make sure we don't go over that line as the year goes on. So, I can generate a budget amendment to try to adjust some of those things. I mean, in the last few years, well, actually, in the last 8 years, we've tried to just do that once a year, around April or May, where we'll adjust the budget for anything that's over or under. The budget is by department in the ordinance, so as long as the departments don't go over their budget, their line items can kind of fluctuate plus or minus. But I mean, we really don't want to, because if they're doing a PO and it shows a negative amount, then I mean, they got to say, okay, where else can I get this money? So, any questions?
Give them a bottom line of each of the funds,
Okay.
where we're at.
All right. On the board budget, we still have 68% available, or $176,000. For admin, we have 33% and 120, which is around $123,000. Finance has 54%, $241,000. Building and grounds has 50%, $640,000. Garage has 60% at $200,000. Streets has 34% at $277,000. They have, they pay for our street lights, and so that has a whole year's worth of street light payment, in that encumbered line, so that's why their budget looks a little shy. Animal Protective Services has 44% at $53,000. She had a new hire, which didn't have a budgeted line item, but I'm sure Kate has figured out where that money's coming from. So, we'll fix that later. Police Department has 53% at $1.1 million in their budget left. Fire has 33% at $679,000. Rescue has 41% at $217,000. Planning has 52% at $310,000. Parks and Rec has 69% at $662,000. Community Building has 36% at $44,000. Tourism has 52% at $195,000. Let's see, it's a little hard to tell about our solid waste contract, which is our garbage. It's over budget because of Angie's encumbered PO, so I think we're probably pretty on target for that. PAL bill still has 52%, $93,000 available. Fireman's Fund, we usually fix that budget with a budget amendment because that's their fundraising account. It's still part of their budgeting process, however, but so at the moment they have spent $48,000, but I think they've raised like $49,000. So it's okay. We will fix that negative budget situation with a budget amendment. Our capital project ordinance still has $480,000 left out of the $1.2 million. The electric fund shows way low. It shows at 18%, but it's over budgeted in the power. for a whole year. When you budget a PO for 2.8 million, that kind of eats up your whole budget there. We still have $1,855,000 left in that budget, and most of that will be for the underground. Water and sewer is 55% at 4.2 million.
On the electric fund, how much is in that, I'm going to use the wrong term, the fund balance?
I have a spreadsheet. I'll go over it after this.
Thank
okay?
you.
Yep. Let's see. So there's one here that says sewer development fees. That was a requirement that we have a separate fund, separate fund for our sewer development fees. The budget was $780,000, but we've actually collected, it's being coded to water and sewer. Oh, I don't have that, it's in the revenue section. I'll go over that one later. But system development fees are reserved for capital items. Okay? The part of grant.
Melanie, can I ask you, for capital items, could lift station repair and things like that be considered capital, or does it have to be a new project?
No, infrastructure repair, major repair is capital. Mhm. The part of grant, let's see, it's coming to a real close to being finished. Is that right, Heather? So I'll let Heather talk to you about the part of grant. ARPA funding, we did receive our second half of that, $631,977. That is a reimbursement of wages grant. That's what was recommended by the League and Local Government Commission for the easiest way to account for that money. So for our audit for '22, the first half of that money is going to be reimbursing our water and sewer fund for wages. The second half, we could do the same, or we could do it in the general fund. That could be your decision. But there's plenty of room for it to go back to water and sewer. Waterfront stabilization, $5 million. We have not spent any of that money yet. I think we have engaged an engineer, but I don't think we actually did an encumbered PO for that yet. Okay, that's it on the water, on the general fund expenditure budget. Any questions?
For the power bill, have we allocated all the money, power bill money for this year, or are we gonna have some of it left over or whatever?
No, the 90, I think it was $96,000 that's in there is what we have that we can spend this year. We have the original balance, where we at? I left my sheet.
And have we made plans for spending that, or is that what?
There are no distinct plans for spending. You know, a lot of it, the first part of it was done with quite a few storm drain repairs. And also, we have another storm drain repair I've been looking at in Willow Moss. It's off in the Ridge. That, of course, that development which the storm drain has been kind of a nightmare since we took it over. You know, we've been doing repairs there quite often, sinking storm drains, no solid ground underneath it. It's wet, and now we have a situation where there's an area that's sinking that's under asphalt and curbing and under a sea of concrete. And, you know, I did have a contractor come look at it just to kind of give me a ballpark of what the expectation might have been. And the answer I got was, we can't give you a price because we don't know what's wrong. So I actually reached out to Brunswick County and Oak Island to see, okay, when you have a situation like this, what do you guys do? I mean, obviously, we can't write a blank check, say, okay, come look at it, see what we got, because that could set us up, but some of that's gonna have to go towards that project.
Tom, they're building a new development, and how would any of us know that can't happen, the same process can't happen again? Is there a way, now that we know that it sometimes washes out, is there a way during the development cycle that we have the expertise to go in there and look at it and say, you need to do X or Y or Z, or is that an engineering issue?
Well, it is an engineering issue, but also, now, when, developments are being looked at as they're being, installed. Obviously, the engineers are there, they have to certify everything. But also what the city is doing, and we're fighting such a strong word, but I'm dealing with the hammocks right now.
Mm-hmm.
We won't accept their storm drain or their roads until they get me a complete camera study of the inside condition of their storm drains. So they've been trying to do that. So we get a camera study to see what the condition of it is, make sure all the joints are aligned, there's no offset joints, all the catch basins are sealed.
So we're asking them to get a third-party engineer to come in and do the work and then certify that it's correct, and we will use that.
It is,
Is that right?
they're getting third party, not necessarily an engineer, but they're getting a third party contractor to come in and camera everything, and we review it. Now, we certainly can, if we think it's something that we need to say, okay, we got the footage, send it to one of our engineers to certify it, or have them get it recertified. Not sure the process of that, but we are having them camera the storm drain systems, or we're not taking over any systems. Like I say, we've been dealing with the hammocks for quite some time because they've been unable to pump their system dry to camera it. And that's a problem when they design systems that part of the system is their holding capacity. Because around here, groundwater table is high. They can't dig their retention ponds but so deep, and they don't want to make them but so big because they dig them too big, they're losing real estate.
Correct.
So now, part of the holding, that the engineer says they have to have, part of the holding is within the pipes. So to me, when you have.
And that's okay, that's legal.
It is. I don't like it because the water tables fluctuate and rise, and it's not like these pipes are just, most of them are concrete pipes, they're just sealed with a tar gasket. So to me, when water's going in, going out, going in, going out constantly, it allows for some seepage and what I call a vortex to pull the dirt in. So even though it may be installed correctly, perfectly fine, there's really no way to guarantee it's not going to.
And the only reason I ask is because I have no expertise in this whatsoever, but I was sitting through some discussions on future planning, future developments, and that development you just brought up, and I was just want to make sure that we're not going to repeat ourselves, because we're going to repeat ourselves. So that was the purpose of my question.
Rich, if I can just add on to that a little bit, I think it's, and I'm not saying this in regards to any specific development, and I'm not saying this towards any specific individual. I think most of those things happened a long time ago, and probably nobody that's here was even involved. But yeah, I mean, I think it's safe to say that we, as a city, didn't always do what we should have done to have inspected this stuff while it was being constructed and before we took it. I think we're getting much better at that, and I think that, we've authorized the hiring of a part-time engineer, city engineer, and I think having somebody like that on staff will make a huge difference in these types of situations. We'll actually have somebody who has the time and knowledge and expertise to check on this stuff as it's being put in the ground to make sure it's being done correctly.
Yeah, I was hoping that was going to be the answer, but my question going into the budget cycle is a half-time engineer the right amount of hours for the amount of work that's going to be done here? And do we have to bite the bullet and double the salary, whatever we have to do to get an engineer at least 40 hours a week here?
We're going to have to take a look at, we have interviews a week from tomorrow, two very, very qualified people. I'm very excited, so we'll have to just monitor, and then by budget time, hopefully I'll have a recommendation, and even from them, so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next slides are the revenue versus the budget. And so here we are again, the budget, our annual budget. This is for the period of December and a year-to-date of 6 months with a variance. No encumbered column here. I mean, there is a column there, but there are no dollars there. And then we have a remaining uncollected column. So at the moment, at mid-year, the biggest number that we look to collect is, of course, is our ad valorem taxes. And it's at 45%. But the county collects our money. We get it delayed a month, okay? So I looked, and on January the 6th, we received $938,000. We'll probably receive that again in February and March. We normally collect 98 to 99% of our ad valorem taxes. So we have a really good collection rate. The county does a great job of that, of helping us collect our taxes. So, I mean, looking through the revenue, I did not identify anything that I felt like was a problem. ABC store distributions are right on target.
Melanie, if I can just ask a favor, could you make the first revenue item taxes current year? Can we just add ad valorem to that so that
Sure.
we're all clear?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. The rest of the budget sheets are kind of revenues that are sort of identified by department, like civil penalties and pet licenses and donations for animal care. I would say it's probably on target. I think each department head can probably identify whatever revenues that they may have responsibility for collecting. Shop with a Cop is a very strong program for our police department. They do an excellent job with that. Fire department is on target. They did budget $150,000 for a state grant that I think we probably will not be getting at the moment. Rescue squad fees are really, really good shape. I think they'll probably exceed their budget. Planning and permitting will exceed their budget. We do have a line item for cemetery lot. We have only sold one $50 lot this year. And on that page, it says ARPA funding, and that's an error. The Department Code 50 I had set up as the ARPA grant, and my cemetery lot sales has that 50 in the department, so I'll have to recode that and fix that so it doesn't show up as an ARPA grant.
It's higher than that, right, Travis? Because I remember you and I had the meeting yesterday with Kylie. It's one.
So this may have been a permit. This may have been a $50 permit then, so it's probably a $50 permit because it says lot sales and fees. Well, Parks and Rec. I'll let Heather talk about Parks and Rec. You don't know? Okay, well, your revenue at the moment is a little under, but I'm sure.
Parks and Rec's revenue always comes in, a large portion of it, in April and May and June because summer camp. That's my highest activity that costs the most. And, you know, we take about 40.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
You get it wrong, you're over.
Well, thank you. See, I'm
I'm ready to
used
say,
to-
it looked like she's way over, so.
I'm used to explaining myself.
I'm sorry, Heather, you're over. And it's probably because of the Golden Leaf money that came in, but yeah, so you're in good shape. Community building rental is in good shape. I think it'll be probably over its budget. Tourism, probably the same thing, probably will be over its budget in revenue. So with all these overages in revenue, we should have a surplus come the end of the year. Unless someone decides that we need that money and we have to do a budget amendment and appropriate that money. So I don't have anything else on the revenue side. Anybody got any questions about revenue?
I have a question about revenue. I have a question about fund balance. Do you have a sense of percentage-wise what our fund balance will be for this year?
Can you pull up this page? Yeah, yeah. Do we have a copy machine in this building? No. Yes. You can't expand that either, can you? So, for 2022, this is the same kind of spreadsheet that I've done in the past, so, you know. So I usually base it on the audit, and since our audit is not finished at the moment, so that's an estimated column for 21, 22. So I take the beginning balances from the prior year and go forward. And I tried to verify this with the auditor, but I think we're going to have $1 million surplus for the general fund for 22,
Of
for 22,
flat,
for June 30, 22.
okay.
So, you know, as far as, and that puts the percentage of fund balance to expenditures right around 52%, which is pretty nice. Sounds very nice, right, Bonnie?
Here, from the taxpayers, you overtaxed us.
However, I will say every GFOA, you know, Governmental Finance Officers Association conference I've gone to here recently is coastal counties. You know, they've always said a minimum of 30, but they're saying 30 plus now. 30 is not in stone anywhere. They want to see more because you have different situations among different towns. You may have more debt than the other. So the higher your debt, the higher that percentage needs to be.
And two, we've got this many capital projects.
Right. So right now, the only capital project that has come out of this is the $1.2 million, right? for the capital project fund that we did last year, that we have like 480,000 left in. Right, we could add, right, especially if I get a verification that that is a good estimate, you know, with the audit, right. Electric fund, well, let me go back, general fund. So the unassigned amount anticipated available cash would be $4.7 million in the general fund at the end of '22. And if I carried it out at the end of '23, I'm saying maybe we'll have a surplus of money and it'll be up to maybe 5.4 million. Yeah, that's just a crystal ball, though, of course. But it does look like we're going to be, you know, over-collected on our revenue. Okay, electric fund. When you get this sheet, you're going to see this, and it's got $20 million on there. Well, 13,500 is at capital assets, so that's not spendable again, okay? Unrestricted money is 6.9 million in our electric fund. And that's, you know, already taking into account the projects or the money that we've already allocated in the underground capital line. And Ellie can talk about where they're at as far as, yeah, where that's at, if it'll carry over into next year or whatever. Yes. So that would be available after, if we spent all that 1.6 in the electric fund, okay? Water sewer fund, the two line items that are spendable for us, one that says other restrictions, that is the development fees that we have collected, and it has accumulated there. And that'll be at $3.5 million. And the unrestricted balance in water and sewer should be around $2 million.
I'm sorry, I'm confused. I'm looking at water sewer. The first number is 14 million, right?
Right, that's capital assets.
That's our assets, what we own, physical things. Okay,
Right.
thank you.
And that first column is back in 2019, 2020, so this was just a comparative kind of thing to show you a progression or regression of our fund balance. And we've pretty well kept on an incline for the last 8 years. So we'll get you copies of these, and any questions you have, you know, just holler out.
Hope to be able to get you these on a monthly basis in paper copy, so you don't go blind. Because I think it's important you are the keepers of the budget, that you have an update as you go along and can ask questions at any time.
Yeah, you have gotten them in the past. It's just this last year has been a little strenuous on finance to get these out with staff turnover and all the other things that have been going on. So, yep. Okay.
Questions? Thank you, Melanie. You can move on, Ms. Kate.
Thank you. I thought my voice was so powerful. I guess it isn't. Strengths and weaknesses of this city of Southport, internal and external. City manager.
Yes, our Assistant City Manager, Ms. Dory, is going to be our scribe for today. And this is an opportunity for all of you to go around, give us your strengths and weaknesses, both externally and internally. And if we go one by one, just give me 2 each, and then we can always ask staff for some input, and I'll give you examples. So for the external strengths, I put beauty and history of Southport. The external weaknesses is the construction on Route 211. You know, I mean, yes, it's an improvement, but that's going to have a huge impact while it's going on in this community. Internal strengths, I strongly believe it's your staff. Absolutely. Without them, the city wouldn't be achieving a lot of what it is. And then internal weaknesses is definitely our lack of policies, procedures, nothing's in writing, and we've got to update what we do have, but we don't have a lot. So those are just examples that you can kind of think about as we go around. So, ladies first. Ms. Karen, you have any thoughts on any of these?
Could I just have one
Sure.
question? What is meant by nothing in writing? I just want to know what you said, lack of policies, nothing in writing.
There are a lot of policies, we don't even have them in writing. We have no processes in writing. I know there's 3 of us in particular that are just like shocked, or they're very old, they're not even relevant, they're not even up to federal laws. So we have got to do something to update personnel policies, purchasing policies, financial policies, so that we're in the 21st century.
Just wanted the public to at least have
Yep.
an example. So
We are-
personnel purchasing, that type thing.
All
There
kinds of policies.
are policies that are either not there or need to be upgraded, improved, and that type of thing. Okay, thank you for that
Yep.
clarification.
Ms. Karen?
Well, you hit the big ticket items. Certainly our strength is staff and then, and our community. I think part of, in addition to the widening project, just all of the development along the 211 corridor is going to be our future challenge, a challenge for us in the future. Can we get, I'm assuming we can get, once we hire a new attorney, we can get some help with some of these policies and procedures? And with our HR, yeah.
And the league, because when
And the
they were
league.
leaving, they said to me, call, we can help you put them together and get some policies together. Plus, there's an organization, Government Finance, GFOA, they have a ton of policies and procedures for financials. We just got to adapt them for our use.
I'm not quite sure what, I have a whole list of things as far as from different projects and those kinds of things I want to see, but, okay, thank you, I'm good.
Yep. Mr. Lombardi, any thoughts?
Well, I think one of our strengths is the waterfront, if that's, yeah. Weakness? I think it was covered. I really don't have any other, just construction and what we're going through. That's really
Okay.
all I can think of. Yeah, infrastructure.
Mayor?
Yes, thank you. I think, infrastructure certainly is, in particular, our underwater, pipes and that type of thing. But it's getting better because we have that USDA loan, so look at what a weakness is and is there a mitigating factor, and there is, so thankful for that. In terms of our external strengths, I think, we mentioned we have the League of Municipalities, we have Cape Air Council of Government, we have how fortunate that, North Carolina has a UNC School of Government. Our legislators have been very helpful, so that's I think an external strength that we have. And then an external strength is just if I'm allowed one more, just the tradition, the reputation of Southport as a beautiful destination in tourism. I mean, that's an amazing strength that we have. In terms of internal strengths, absolutely, staff, our people, our citizens. It's like a tidal wave of beauty and talent and people that love being here and want to be here. And of course your mayor, probably the strongest internal strength. Randy's a little wishy-washy on that one, so we'll strike that one to Madam Clerk. In terms of internal weaknesses, we've talked about that. In external weaknesses, I like the way that you said it. It is development. It is that 211 corridor, that 133 corridor. There, people are going to come here, whether they're in a neighborhood, a new development, or whether either in the city or outside the city. Southport is and this is a strength, and a weakness, I guess. It's the downtown of Brunswick County, and people love coming here, and that's great, and that's good for us. So I could go on and on, but I will turn it over to Alderman Allen.
I think most of them have been mentioned. I guess the main thing I'd just kind of reemphasize again is the external weaknesses. The number of visitors that we get. I mean, we're being loved to death in a way. It is all the development that's taken place on 211. But if all that development was taking place on 211 and all those people didn't come into Southport, it wouldn't be that big of a problem. But the fact is, they all want to come down here to enjoy our amenities. And obviously, I think it's not going to surprise anybody to say that we're struggling to be able to absorb them and deal with them, and we're going to have to figure out a way to do that.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, by the time it gets here, I don't have much that I can say that's unique or different, but I think our external strength, these are the two words I wrote down. They're the same word for both the strength and weakness, and that's tourism. While it is our strength, it's also our weakness. It's the thing that is putting strain on our infrastructure, and so that's a place where we're looking for opportunity to take advantage of that. When they're coming into our town, how do we allow them to leave money behind? And so we're looking for ways to do that. Our internal strengths, I agree with the mayor. We've got a great board of aldermen. No, first and foremost, our staff. We are very fortunate to have the best, and we believe we recently got Bonnie on board to stick around. We did that because we believed it was in the best interest of staff. We believe in what you guys are doing, and we trust you, and Bonnie does as well. So I think that staff and good leadership that we now have is one of our greatest strengths.
I can only echo the issue of the policies. We talk a lot about policies and lack thereof. We do not need to invent the wheel. There's lots of good policies out there that just need minor tweaking. This should be able to be, if we have staff to do it, we should be able to take big hunks every quarter out with some new policy, and we let people know that we're building on that program. Infrastructure obviously is a downside, but as mentioned before, I'm going to ballpark $100 million in stuff that we have to fix, and we've got $40 or $50 million that is rolling around somewhere coming in. That's more than in the last 2 years. Getting that amount of money and grants and everything else is more than's been done in the past 30 years here. So we're moving in the right direction on that. And I think and I do agree with the staff is very good to work with. I think one of our biggest positive things is our citizens. The citizen enthusiasm for some of the big ticket items that we've had in the past 2 years is amazing. When you can have the community center, you have to open all the doors and all the windows. You have people standing outside for hours waiting to rotate themselves through, to get close to the door so they can hear the speeches, because they have done that. I don't know in the past if we've had, I'm going to have to depend on people that have been here longer than I have, that you've had that kind of public enthusiasm for a topic. And they come and they're not throwing rocks for the most part. And they are trying to express their wishes, and they're doing it professionally. And that is what small-town America is supposed to be all about. Local municipal governments are supposed to listen to the people, and we hope that they participate. The problem is, in many places, they're apathetic, and they don't show up. And so that gives a spirit within this city that helps us move forward.
Department heads or anybody else? Are we missing anything? Strengths, weaknesses?
I would say one of our major strengths is the volunteerism within this community. That adds to the quality of life, so I would just like to add that. We couldn't do it without our volunteers.
Us? Just so you know how I'm using this, is it'll be a way for us to model the budget when we get into it, looking at trying to strengthen those weaknesses and moving them into another column for the next year. So that's how I've used this technique in the past, and we'll use it again. So I appreciate everybody's input on that. Ms. Kate, you want to move ahead? And now this is the big time for you guys. You can talk about the projects, you can talk about all the different areas that you want us to concentrate for the budget. Let me just announce that our Assistant City Manager will now be supervising development services, communications, and animal protective services. So just in the future, she'll be handling those, and then the rest of you lucky devils get to stay with me. So anyways, I think it's a good opportunity for Dory to learn the supervisory skills and help us move together, so just so you know that. So we're going to do administration first. And again, we wanted to hear from the board if there's anything in these particular areas that you wish us to concentrate on budget-wise. Then we will start moving on those when we're putting together the budget. So, Mr. Rich, you get to start this time.
You know the object of what my main thrust here. Does it fall under administration, or does it fall under infrastructure? I want to modify the way we do the budget.
So what's your question? I'm sorry.
So my question that I have is, we go through the whole budget process, and then sometime around the end closer to June, we vote on a budget. But we have some things that are in funds, like electricity.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm curious to know, if we can legally, we can discuss whether that's a good idea second, can we legally vote on that separately? And so, to give you an example, if supply chain issues are there, and we know there's going to be inflation issues that are going to be there, if we voted on, let's say in March, that we wanted to spend $1.6 million again on underground, and then Brunswick Electric would know that's what they're going to spend. So they could immediately, not wait till July 1st, immediately start pricing that all out, figuring out what that is. The second part of that scenario is, can we tap into the fund before July 1st, or can they just have all the orders ready, and then on July 1st we actually pay for it to speed up the process of putting, for this particular discussion, putting more stuff underground, so when our hurricane season comes, which is at the end of the hurricane season, September and October, we might actually have some more stuff underground and lessen our risk for blackouts and stuff. And I'm trying to figure out if we did it for the sewer and we did it for the electric and broke parts out, pass early, see if we can spend early. We wouldn't be spending on necessarily the personnel costs that bury the cables and all of that, but the purchasing of the things, hardware. I'd like to see if that's one legal, and then have a discussion sooner than later with the board to see if that's something we would like to do. So I asked the manager the other day so I could talk to Ellie, and I talked to Ellie about it. I think we're on the same page on this, and that we both think this is a good idea if it's possible, to see how we can speed things up and get things done quicker, cheaper, and hurricane season perhaps before hurricane season.
Well, I mean, I can put that on a future workshop too, and, because then I'll talk with Melanie and we'll get the answers to everything. I think you can, but I just want to make sure.
And Brunswick Electric, maybe you would want to include them since we're going to they're our contractor.
So we were talking about, as soon as once we decide how much money we're going to spend, that would trigger a conversation with them right then to say, this is where, you, Brunswick Electric, along with Ellie, had this list of what's the next thing in line. Which one of those can we do for $1.6 million, or how many of them can we do? And they can start working from, let's say, March on. And by July, stuff could be here, we could be doing things. Instead of, now we're in January and we're still working on River Drive.
Right. I agree. A budget amendment to this year's budget. But I want to check with BEMC and Ellie. I want to make sure, can
Right.
they handle it? Can we handle it?
This is just theoretically right now. I just want to figure out, can we do it legally? Can we do it mechanically? And then the last part is, do we want to do it?
Obviously, we're all for greater efficiency and cost savings. I think we do have to be mindful of institutional capacity because we are already working on stuff. It's not like they're sitting around waiting for July 1st to start doing work. So, we've already, both our staff, their staff, et cetera. So.
Material supply has been the problem, and I think this would help solve some of it. I think it's a good idea.
I think the point Alderman Allen was making, this is a year-round project. It's not like they're sitting around there. And if you saw on the palette, they showed where that is on, was it Cape Harbor Drive? They showed, Cape Fear Drive, close. But anyway, they showed that picture in the paper. And so it's an ongoing thing. And what is their capacity? What if you give them $5 million? Could they even use that much? So what is their capacity? How quickly can they do it? Yeah, we want everything to be, as you say, more efficient, cost-effective. But they should be working on it every day. This is, Mr. Superintendent, isn't that your understanding also? They're working on this? Did they use up the whole 1.6 million from this past budget, if you would?
On our major projects, they're currently working on Cape Fear and River Drive right now, and we actually budgeted for the parts for those two projects on last year's budget, and then that just left us with roughly $614,000 worth of the labor to put out on purchase orders under this current year. So that leaves us, and looking at the spreadsheets, we got like 1.115 million that's available to us. And what we want to move, and what we had previously discussed, the whole board and staff and everybody was taking a more aggressive stance on the undergrounding. So we are looking at, and what we are with the Cape Fear and River Drive, we're right about halfway. I think there's one or two services that have to connect to the underground on Cape Fear. Then the conduit is already there on River Drive. That's already been bored in. They just got to pull wire, connect up, and start connecting those houses. Then we can start on the west side, which is from West Bay Street to West St. George, and including Brunswick Street and North Caswell Avenue. And the rough order of magnitude on that is 1.5 million. And what we also are looking at on that as we move ahead with things like that is prioritizing and sectionalizing them so we can, hey, just stake out these 6 square blocks right here and let me know how much that is in a few weeks. And then we can say, all right, well, let's cut a PO for this. And so
the work is being done. It's not, the money is there and the work is being done. It's not, whether it's hurricane season or not, it's being done.
that's Correct, the money is there, the work is being done. We do come kind of at a standstill a little bit with certain things, at the peak of tourist season when it's just impossible to get around. But we do make adjustments. We do go out there after hours and before hours to do what we can, and keep moving forward, as well as correcting the things that happened with an old overhead system, which they do, and that's the whole thing. Why we're more aggressive now in getting this stuff underground, so it is more reliable.
And I'm not talking about. I'm sorry, Mayor, go ahead. I interrupted you. I apologize. I'm not talking about actually the personnel costs of doing digging. I'm talking about buying things and storing them for that part of it. So we're ahead of that curve. That's the only part I'm talking about.
If I can add one comment, I think a month and a half ago or so, Ellie, Bonnie, and myself went out to BMC. Could have been a little bit longer than that. Went out to BMC for an overview of all the projects they have going. Brought Bonnie up to speed, brought me and Ellie up to speed. And what we decided to do in your lines is we already prepaid for the next project's materials. We cut a PO for around, don't know the exact number, but around $945,000 to go ahead and they ordered it. So it will get here. So by the time Cape Fear and River Drive is done, we're not cutting a PO, waiting another 6 months for materials. Hopefully the materials will be here so they can go ahead and keep this crew in Southport and the project never stops. So materials have been pre-ordered for 23, 24 years, but 24 budget year project.
And this might be a question for Melanie. Do we have a sense of, I know if I'm remembering this right, it's 6.9 million is, I'm going to use the word fund balance in the electric fund, that's where the 1.6 came out of last year, right? So are we building that back any, or I'm not talking about, take away the 1.6 conversation, but without that being a factor, would we be still building it? I just want to have a sense of, we try to maintain a healthy fund balance in electric because we are a hurricane alley. So I'm trying to kind of understand what are the limitations of our funding in that fund.
Isn't that where the development fees go to? Okay.
So my understanding in the electric fund was, when we sold our asset, the Electric City sold their assets, from that point forward, we were like obligating $800,000 annually to go underground.
And then upped it to 1.6.
And last year we upped it to 1.6. So we may have had a few years that we've had an increase in our fund balance, but generally, no, we're not trying to increase that fund balance. We're trying to spend any money and extra money to go underground.
So was the $800,000 accounted for in the budget in how we do our billing and all of that?
Yes. It's the $800,000 has always been in our line item for capital project for underground.
But didn't we not do that for 2 years because of COVID? We didn't spend the 800,000?
Right.
Which is why
we upped it to
we doubled it up on
1.6.
last year?
Right. So, but no, we haven't, we are not really growing that. It may have grown a little, but no. I mean, that's always been my understanding, was that we were trying to put everything extra into underground.
Getting back to administration, because we don't have much up there. Are there any goals or anything for administration, finance, HR, community
Yeah.
relations?
I've got
Go ahead.
space. So I think that we've had the conversation already about police. We need to have the conversation about public works and others. I think ultimately find ways to create space for them. Competitive wages and benefits for our employees. we need to continue to stay on top of that and find out where we are. And hiring, that we had a ton of jobs and expectations last year that never got hired for. I think couldn't find people to work in our cemeteries. So I think that's another key component. How do we do something that actually causes people to want to show up and work?
I'd add that I think what we were just talking about, the update of policies and procedures should probably go in there too.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, oh, go ahead, you want to go? You can- No, I would, of course, my big thing is infrastructure, but I think that our Public Works Department is lacking in help, and I would really like to see in the budget some people, but I know it's hard hiring, but I think a lot of this work that we hire contractors for can be done in-house with the right people. And eventually, after we get finished with all the underground, we're going to have to start paving and resurfacing the streets. And I think, and I've touched on this with Tom and also with Bonnie, about having a little paving crew and letting them do the paving on the streets. Instead of calling a contractor in every time you got to do an intersection. And I think that we're capable of that. I know that the staffing is the big problem, but I think that's something that we have to really strive for.
Dory, can you put that under Public Works? Because I know we're not there yet, but I don't want to lose the thought. That you jumped a column. That's okay, Mr. Lombardi.
I was looking at infrastructure. Okay.
Again, anything administration? I'm sorry,
Me.
Karen.
No, that's good. Talking about strategic planning, I know that's why we're here. I would like us to work toward a budget design that is integral to strategic planning and create our budget to reflect the standards established by the Government Finance Officers Association. And earn the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. That's a budget that's based in a 5-year plan, and that is truly where we need to be. So these standards create a budget document that is a policy document, and a finance plan, an operations guide, and a communications tool. So I think that is the gold standard for this approach. There are some of our sister communities like Beaufort that you can reference. Anybody can go online and look at their budget. There's an example of that type of budget. And that really, when we're looking at trying to plan and policy and create policy, I would really like us to.
Yeah, that's nothing that happens overnight, but if we could do a section at a time, I agree. I mean, finance directors, nothing personal, Meredith, Melanie, they'll line the walls with these certificates to the point where you're like, okay, take them, because they're very proud of them, as they should be, putting them together. But they are a lot of work.
Right.
Administration, anything? Okay. Then we'll head on to infrastructure. Tom and Ellie, you're probably the ones up on this part.
So
under administration, you had finance, human resources, community relations, and communication. So did anyone mention anything about community relations and communications? Any input? Well, I would like to at least speak on that. I'm very proud of what y'all are doing right now. And I think part of the key is how do we get our message out? And I think that's very important. Are people reading the newsletter? Is there something we need to change with it? Are we using Southport Connected properly? Do the citizens feel like they are up to date on the information that we have and that we're putting out? So I look forward to meeting with y'all so in better ways that I can get my message out as mayor, like we have been doing in the past, with video updates and that type of thing. I think it's very important, but I think that newsletter is important. And I don't think we need to advertise to bring people to Southport. We just need to put the time and the date and what's going on, and I think they will come. So I don't think we have to worry about that at all. In terms of human resources, we have a new human resources person there, Patty. Thank you. And what a big department. A lot of work, so appreciate. I've worked with you on several things, and I appreciate how that's gone from whether it was with the city managers. We sent them all letters thanking them, and that was important to do, so thank you for that, and thank you, city manager, for doing that. So these are things I think that are equally as important as our infrastructure and that type of thing. So Randy, thank you, and Cheyenne, and as we move forward in that regard, getting our meetings out, I mean, they're just so crucial. And the more that we can get out in terms of information, the better. So thank you.
I have one more thing. If it's because community relations, this is a project for community relations. Would I say that now? And this has to do with the Community Relations Department is responsible for managing the city's branding. And I just want to talk a little bit about city signage. We have, as an example, we've owned the City Hall building for around 10 years. This past year, the exterior of City Hall was repaired and painted and looks awesome. And I think it's time to replace the makeshift sign that was left by the previous owner. But before we replace the sign, we need to create sign branding for the city so that going forward, as we are replacing signs, we have a cohesion and it reflects our historic character and has a consistent look throughout the town. So I'd like the Community Relations Department to work on bringing forth designs and recommendations. So I think that would be really awesome.
Now I think we're ready for infrastructure.
Yeah. So last year when we had this conversation, I brought up the talk about electric and the idea of doubling our budget. I think we need to continue to do that. We've got $6.9 million sitting somewhere, and we've got power lines above ground. It doesn't make sense, where we live for that to be the case. I know downtown we lose power just as often from squirrels as we do storms. So I hope we'll focus on that. I think we're already working on, sewer, water, stormwater. Those are all a priority. I think we can all agree on. I reached out to Bonnie about a couple of street pavements that I think are important, and I believe Tom did a little research on that, or maybe, yeah. So.
And it was given over to Representative William Miller. Jesus.
Okay, cool,
Passed.
wonderful.
Do we know how much fund balance we should have in the electric fund? I mean, we got 5.9, but I mean, do we have any idea what the appropriate number is? I mean, is there any way?
Usually the policy board sets that, what they want for a fund balance and all the different funds. So maybe that is something that we can bring to you at a future workshop to decide that threshold. And actually, you put it into an ordinance is usually what happens. So it binds one group to another so that the next group doesn't come along and plays with the money. So
I guess part of that, it'd be nice to know what we've spent during past hurricanes or whatever other events occur that require us to use that money. I assume do we get that Is that a FEMA reimbursement for if we fix power lines back?
Ms. Assistant City Manager is our FEMA rep.
Really depends on how much damage there is total and if the state declares the state of emergency, whether they will reimburse. We did submit that information to FEMA for Hurricane Ian, but we're still waiting to hear back if that's going to be considered.
So to follow up on your thing, John, I guess we need to figure out on the last 5 storms, how much have we spent, and then make sure we have at least that much money in the bank. Okay.
All right, so we're on, I want to make sure we're on infrastructure. Sorry, okay, good, thank you. As we've talked about earlier, if we're going to, infrastructure is so dependent on an engineer. And so, and I've said this before, and we're looking for a city attorney, so it's lawyers, engineers, and money, funding. And those are the 3 things I think. Thank you. Yes, right, yes. Lawyers, guns, and money, yeah. So I really think that is just crucial to our infrastructure. And if we look back, I have from 2020, I have the notebook from our retreat, and I have my list. And we were talking about sewer, wastewater. Look where we've come. We've come from building our own to now we're regionalizing. Waterfront stabilization had started in 2015, it's not gone anywhere, and now we have $5 million in the bank, and we have an engineer that's working on that. And so, remember the city dock. Look how long it took to get that fixed. We have a city dock, and now I think this would be, may or may not be an infrastructure. You've been championing the dredging, Mayor Pro Tem. Yeah. So, and she'll talk more about that. Think about when the marina was going to put boat lifts in the yacht basin, and I said not one piling. And so we hired an attorney from Raleigh who was able to come down and help us prevent that. And so you look at the USDA loan we have on the west, for the west side, to replace those pipes, and I know you've seen those pictures of those corroded iron pipes. Stormwater management, we've got to figure that out as a citywide problem. I'm proud of the problem, Tom, that y'all fixed down by Oliver's. You put in that second pipe, and now that flooding has decreased tremendously when we have these heavy rains. In 2020, there was the revision of the UDO. Think of that saga, and we did well with that. So, obtaining grants, that's still so important. Mosquito control, we didn't have to spray once. Is that correct? Not one. That's what the compared to what happened in 2021. It was an avalanche of mosquitoes after that big rain, and so we did some larvicide, and it's done well. So we'll see. We'll be ready for that. So think about the crosswalks we have now, whereas before we didn't have any. So that's part of the infrastructure and part of the safety and the public health of our citizens. In 2020, we had COVID. Think how in 2020 we would not have been sitting here like this. We'd all have masks on. We don't have to now. And and superintendent, the power lines, they're going under. We're getting it done, and we're going to keep getting it done. We were recovering from Hurricane Isaias in 2020. The marina, although the city doesn't own the marina, look at it now compared to what it was August 3rd, 2020. So we're making progress. It takes time, and that's why these sessions are so important, so we can we move our city forward. Director Hemphill, Taylor Field, my goodness, how that's come along. getting the money for that, the part of grant, and the Harper family so generous in donating that land and what the city now has done for it. So how we manage growth, we know what we're facing, and how do we do that? That's part of the infrastructure, because providing electricity, providing, how do we cooperate with the county, and that's important. That's part of our infrastructure story. So very proud of what has been done and proud of how we're planning for the future, and appreciate the board being so progressive in that, appreciate city staff as they work through this. These are, compared to 5 years ago and 10 years ago, and I was here, I was not mayor, of course, but the complexity of the issues now compared to then, there is no comparison. There is no comparison. 10 years ago, and I'll say it many times, the headline in the pilot, and we're talking about the budget in the distant future, they said it was going to be lean and mean. We just can't do. You were here, Ellie. You remember those days where, there was no tax increase, and you kept things pretty much status quo. And that's not a criticism; it's an observation. That's how things were in Southport then. They're not like that anymore. So, our streets, Tom, thank you. You're always on top of that, and talking about the volunteers. And Randy, thank you for mentioning the volunteers and the importance of volunteerism in our city. It's just incredible. So in terms of infrastructure, that is our biggest item. Millions and millions of dollars will need to go into it, but we're ready to face the challenge. So
I think everything was covered except for one small little thing that I've mentioned previously. We have a lot of standing water around the city. And a lot of it is due very simply because the shoulder is higher than the road. If we cut down the shoulder a little bit, even if it's just a small portion, that water will run off into ditches, into pipes, into grass, whatever. And I think we could eliminate a lot of puddles and standing water in the city, and also help with mosquitoes. We've done that, and it's worked, and I think we should continue to do it. I know manpower is the problem, and I mentioned that before. Thank you.
Do we have a timeline for the merger feasibility study, Tom?
The original, I believe, I don't have it with me, but I believe Wooten gave us like 8 months to a year, but they're going to try and speed it up. I think around three months. Bonnie can
The county is hoping to get it ASAP, so Wooten knows that, so they're putting that as a really high priority.
Also, of course, dredging the yacht basin is an infrastructure priority.
I'll take back just a few minutes. I would like to say thank you to Representative Miller on the crosswalks. That's been awesome. And if you're listening, I'd like to see another crosswalk at the intersection of Leonard and Howe. I think that's a very appropriate place. We've got a lot of walking traffic down to the shops and restaurants down there. I'd also just like to make a note, now that we have an HPC, I think that it's time for us to think about a different type of signage, street signage and things, in the designated historic district. So as we move forward to getting to that point, I'd like to see that as an option.
Otherwise known as wayfinding signs, because I've done those before, so I know what you're talking about.
I just want to add that I don't want to lose track of the sewer pump station upgrades, as well as the pedestrian and traffic improvements to the yacht basin. I know we're continuing, and they've been underway, and I'm sure we're going to continue them, but I think they're extremely important, and I don't want to lose track of them. Because what, are we replacing 4 pump stations? Is that right? 3 or 4?
The big answer to that is not necessarily. Right now, I mean, you know, that was a big goal of the previous city manager saying, hey, you know, I think we have money to replace 4 lift stations. You know, not the worst idea, but I think it was a quick thought of what monies could be used for. But right now, actually today, we have W.K. Dixon out now, right now doing drawdown tests, limited hydraulic studies, trying to test our 6 major lift stations. We have many more than that, but our 7 major lift stations, and the capacities and the conditions of our force mains. So what W.K. Dixon is working on is an overall hydraulic study to get a modeling to see we may not need to rebuild or redo 4 lift stations. We may just need to increase our force mains leaving town. You know, the pipes leaving town. It may be that 2 lift stations need to be repaired, redone, and plus the force main. That's what this project he's working on now. Just to say that, hey, we're going to rebuild or redo 4 lift stations, you know, good thought, but not a complete thought process. There's so much more that has to be done and decided and thought about before you can make an assessment. So what W.K. Dixon is doing, they're doing the limited study, the modeling and hydraulic and getting the pressures, and come back with a priority plan. Okay, this is what we think needs to be done, and then it'll be up to you to decide. Okay, oh my God, it's going to cost another $100 million. You know, we're not going to do it, or okay, just $1 million at a time. This is what we'll start doing. You know, does that mean we just have to replace the lines leaving town? Does that mean we have to add an additional lift station somewhere else to pull to change the, instead of let all the west side go one direction, all the east side go another direction? That's what we're hoping to find out.
Unless anybody has anything else, you have, Rich?
Yeah, and just on the sewer, I think there's 6 things that and we'll talk about the sewer stuff at that workshop. But I think we'd be remiss if we didn't thank Senator Rayburn as well. So 50% of the money came from Representative Miller, and 50% of the money came from the senator. So they both need to have credit. Otherwise, all our good ideas in the world would never go on anywhere because we didn't have the money to do it.
Before we go to Park and Rec, because these 2 things are kind of mutual, you've kind of touched on it, Mr. Lombardi, is Tom has a lot of needs for staffing. I mean, his duties are getting more and more. One of the things with the engineer, as he knows and we've been working on for a while, is to get these interviews over so that he could be the person on the streets and not have to worry about all this budgeting and all this other stuff. So we'll hopefully have somebody on board with that. But the second thing is you have 2 part-timers, right? And you'd like to, go ahead.
I have, you know, Gordon wanted to put in the budget, you know, hey, cemeteries, we can't keep up with the cemeteries. Let's put in sort of 4 part-time, personnel. And I believe maybe it was you, Mr. Alt, said, why 4 part-time? Why can't we get 2 full-time? I believe it was last budget season. Didn't fly. So what I'm at, you know, we had very little interest. Right now we have someone really interested, but to me the ship's kind of sailed in a sense. What I would like to do is take these 4 part-time and turn them into 2 full-time. You guys know we're getting inundated with complaints about the cemeteries. All last year, you know, I heard, I don't care what you have to stop doing, get the cemeteries taken care of. So what I was having to do is stop all operations through all departments, water, sewer, streets, so I would have my water and sewer guys and my buildings and grounds guys at the cemetery. It stops progress elsewhere. You know, it stops maintenance elsewhere if I have to pull other crews to different things. But that's what we are. We're a big family. We help each other. But the point being is, if I had enough staff for the buildings and grounds, maybe I could keep up with the cemeteries. And then if we get the cemeteries cut on Friday, if it rains on Saturday, we're right back in the cemeteries on Monday. You know, you cannot keep up. So my proposition is to turn these 4 part-time in. I know there's benefits included, you know, that'll change the budget amount. Maybe not this year because we have 6 years of excess funding because we hadn't hired anybody. Maybe that would cover the benefits for this year. But my proposition is take the 4 part-time, try and get 2 full-time in here before the season starts. That'll help me with the cemeteries, and the rights of ways and the parks. The other flip side of that, I believe it's part of Heather's Parks and Rec master plan, is for her to have her own, you know, building, parks crew to maintenance, you know, her parks, and I guess that covers all of them, waterfront. And so you have waterfront, Cavaness, and I may not name them all, waterfront, Cavaness, Atlantic Pocket Park, Keziah, Boone, Kingsley, Taylor Field, which is another added work, Taylor Field into 2 dog parks. So if we can get the 2 full-time right now, then when it comes time for the transition to be, there ought to be guys trained for the parks, knowing exactly what's going on. Maybe take one of my better guys, and another. Heather wants to take both of my good guys, period. You know? She's already and again, I need someone experienced, but that's another. We'll fight that battle out on our own. But no, seriously, there ought to be people trained to know what to do with the parks. So at that point, maybe they could transition straight to the parks, and then I'll have guys for right-of-ways, pretty much right-of-ways and cemeteries. That is one thing that I am going to ask, if that's something that's possible, if that's something we can think about or something we can do.
Something that has to be done. We need to hire the staff to do the job that need to be done, whether it's the right-of-way, the cemeteries, our parks. I mean, now is the time. I mean, we increased taxes last year, and that was for a reason. We have more obligations now than we had before. And like I've said before, we had 1 planner, now we have 2. We're looking for more police department members. So it really is hire the staff that we need to do the job, period. And we just have to, I just hope that people will apply. You know, we have lots of people that volunteer, but we haven't had lots of people that, I find it amazing that no one really applied, and you hired no part-time help last year. And we have a responsibility to keep the right-of-ways, the parks, the cemeteries mowed. And there are other things that I've sent to the members. I would send things to Mr. Hargrove. There'd be certain trees in the right-of-way that needed to be trimmed and taken care of, and y'all did that. So we just have to do it. And that's something let's be more robust in getting our message out. We need people to work in these areas, and we're hiring and that type of thing. But these jobs have to be done, and we hope we can hire people that want to be a part of our city government and want to be a part of this great organization and do the work.
And you know, and it may sound funny, but 2 full-times may not be enough, considering, you know, I had 10 people at a time in the cemeteries, you know, last year. I mean, obviously don't need 10 people, but those 2 may not be enough for all the right-of-ways to parks, cemeteries, and again, with the increasing size of Taylor Field and the dog park.
Tom,
Yes, sir.
what's the biggest problem about hiring? Is it just salary or availability?
Well, the part-time, the ones we did get for part-time, a lot of those didn't have driver's license. You know, the applications we did get, the ones who really, really wanted to work come to me in like December-ish, you know, after the big season. Not saying that we wouldn't have been busy in December, but we had a whole lot of other things going on and just didn't have, you know, the time to really dissect it. And I had my thought wrapped around, let's try and get these part-time turned into full-time.
And full-time, same, I mean, you haven't been able to hire anybody, right?
Salary is an issue, you know, salary is an issue, you know. I don't know exactly right off the top of my head what the starting salary right now is for a full-time position for a grounds worker. I believe last year it was somewhere, and I could be wrong, around the $14 an hour range.
Aren't they paying $18 at the Bojangles?
That's the problem, you know, and that's the problem, you know, you don't have benefits at Bojangles, but you're not in the heat, you're not sweating death, you know, and benefits are great. I started late, you know, needing them and wanting them, but in today's time, benefits aren't paying these people's bills. And that's, I think, what we really have to look at. Benefits don't pay the bill. They're great. I mean, they really are. And I tell everybody that Southport has a great benefit package. I try and sell that, but, you know, they want to see it in their paycheck. You know, my recent water hire to help the meter guy who's both are learning, you know, there was a set salary, you know, starting salary for that. We had to do some finagling and bump that up to get him in here. And I think that if that's what it takes to recruit people to Southport, Mr. Carroll, last year, I believe you called me out for my frustration on, you know, retaining and recruiting. Called me out very well. So, you know, so that is a big problem. You know, people want to get paid, and they should get paid.
Not just here, it's everywhere. It's all over the nation, too. But we're going to have to do a comparison of who's our competitors and what are they paying and what are the benefits to see if we are under. I don't know, and I don't think Patty's been here long enough to be able to figure that out, so
I think
we'll do that.
I think that's key. And, you know, Gordon did some pay studies within municipalities, but we're not competing against other municipalities for these types of jobs. We're competing with Bojangles. So, you know, that was one of the first things. We've got to have competitive wages and benefits. And you're right. They don't care about the benefits. They plan on living forever and never getting sick or knowing somebody. So they want to know, how much am I going to get paid today and how quickly can I get it?
A little quick backstory. Back in 1994, when I changed professions, I put an application in at City of Southport, and Carmichael Construction, and I think it was Burn Security at the time. It was CP&L then. I ended up getting a job with Carmichael Construction doing utility. That next week, I got a call from City of Southport and Burn Security. No, thanks, I'm already working. Didn't think about benefits. You know, I was young. I could care less about benefits. I had a paycheck. I was working. And you're right, that's exactly where people's money. Until they get my age, then they're like, oh, yeah, I need to focus on some benefits.
Thank you, gentlemen. I think, Heather, you're up. Parks and Recreation. So, John, we'll start with you. How's that?
That I have a whole lot to say about Parks and Rec because it's extremely well run and is doing a great job. We got Taylor Field Park coming open. Obviously, we just talked about the grass cutting and maintenance partially on that. So I don't know. I don't think I have anything else beyond the projects that we have going on.
Robert?
Parks and Rec is, of course, one of the best, departments we have. And I think, to me, keep your, we've talked a lot about Taylor Field and that type of thing, but what I enjoy, your crab derby, city gym, get those kids out there playing ball, that type of thing, and the activities that you have after school, those are important, the senior events that you have, and if ways to improve your facilities. You've been in that spot a long time. So whether we build a new gym or we fix that gym up and bring it up to 2023 standards and where y'all are, and the classrooms, I mean, they're pretty small. It's a pretty small department. The vehicles that you're using, the staff that you have. I mean, God bless Cookie, but you need more staff. We need to grow. Everything else is growing. So the Parks and Rec department looks about the same as it did when Joe Medlin, and y'all been kind of hanging on all this time. Mm-hmm. And it's time to put more resources into it. And to meet the needs of 2023. So I appreciate all that y'all do, and I love those events, and just make sure you keep doing them, because the kids love them, the parents love them. You see grandparents, parents, and children, grandchildren out there. So thank you, Heather.
Well, basketball season just started,
Good.
so anybody wants any free good entertainment, come to the gym on Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursday nights from 5:30 to 9:30. We have 4 games each night.
And, they're in there practicing in the
Yeah, they
afternoon, so
practice, yeah.
it's one of the best programs we have in the city. So if you have time, get out there, but we need to make sure that the facilities that you have are up to good standards, and that those kids are in a safe environment, and they're just having a good time. It's just such a healthy sport, and a lot of times they don't know whether they won or lost. They're just having
Yep.
such a good time. So thank you for that.
I don't have any questions, but beautification is always here to help you out, and we try all the time to do that. And I was just wondering, when you had the questionnaires and the meetings for your future 5-year plan, I had mentioned something about having the kids, besides playing basketball and baseball and everything, learn some gardening. Did you ever give any thought to that?
No, I think that would be a very good idea, and I've talked with Cookie about, having an area at the community gardens, for our for and after school and summer camp, maybe, to do that. So yeah, that is a good programming idea, and
Yeah.
I have communicated that to staff, but certainly any information or ideas you've got, just we'd be willing to try it.
Well, anybody at the community garden, I'm sure will be willing to help, to teach some kids some skills that could last the rest of their life.
Right. Yes, get their hand in dirt.
Thank you.
Just a couple of things. One, the basketball court in the back, finally, the container has been removed.
Yes.
So I don't know, as you're planning your budget, we need to resurface
Yes.
that or replace it or whatever to make it,
Yes.
because it's a hazard, really.
Yeah, yes, and that will be in my operating budget.
And repainting the back of the
Mural.
gym.
Well, I've
The
actually,
mural, whatever.
yes, I have a lady, that's an art teacher, has contacted me about repainting that and using some of her art students. So I've asked her to, send it to me, send me a letter or email something that, gives me more information. So that, yes, that mural can be brightened up.
A few years back, I got 2 prices, one to replace that concrete and one to resurface it. So I do have that.
Okay.
That's 2 years old.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm still trying to digest your 300-plus-page document,
Yeah.
because
it's
it is quite extensive.
some good reading
and
material.
It is, and I certainly read it, but too quickly the first time when we voted on it the other night. I mean, I understand the gist of it, but I have to really read that in earnest to have any good questions for you.
Okay.
I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
I think that report was awesome, took a lot of effort. I would say that the only comment I would make is I'd go back to Karen's conversation about signage. I think that this should be part of that signage conversation. How do we incorporate our signage so that no matter what park you go to or what city facility, it's cohesive?
Right. It's the
So,
same sign, same colors, everything.
absolutely. Yeah,
Because
so-
all of my parks have different signs. And, with Taylor Field, I'm going to put up not the same one because that's dented and a mess, but have another one built that we had up there that is in the deed. We have to have that sign that says all that information. So I'm going to go ahead and get that put up, but you know, when you said that, yeah, I was thinking, well, for the major sign, the really identifying sign, I would love to do that, because we do not have, you know, a sign that when somebody looks at it, they know, well, that's City of Southport, so.
The other thing that Heather and I have been talking about, I don't even know if you ever talked to the board, is the boundless playgrounds.
No, I have not talked to the board,
Oh,
but I
have you
do.
guys know what a boundless playground is? They're for kids and adults with disabilities, so that everybody can play on these playgrounds. They are fabulous, and
Mm-hmm. Yes.
they are a lot of fun.
They are.
You know, if you've ever, because they're so different. And I've worked with a number of communities that have built and they're pretty much fundraised. You know, there's such a commitment to this. And so I worked with a nonprofit organization in Missouri. Heather and I have already talked to them. And you've got money from the Lions, correct? That
I
they're
do.
willing to help out to get this going. And if, I don't know if they've agreed yet, but if they did, and I can't think of her name right now. Natalie would come in and do all the fundraising and everything to build one, because there's so many playgrounds, kids,
Yes.
they can't play on. They just can't.
Yeah.
So we've been working on that.
Yes, and you know, that would actually be a phase 2 of Taylor Field Park, and it is identified in the future phase section. But this would be a totally inclusive park, not an ADA accessible, but inclusive. And yeah, Natalie's great. You know, she brought up, you know, because at first, when somebody says that, only thing that you can think is kids with disabilities can play. But there's a whole other side to that. You've got, you know, their brothers or sisters that doesn't have a disability. They can, you know, swing together. But also, it serves for parents and adults that have a disability. You know, if you're in a wheelchair and your daughter, you can't swing with your daughter if there's not one available. So, you know, you generally think children, you know, playground and children, but this really would be for children, adults. A lot of vets are coming back with injuries. And you know, we're a pretty big military city, and we do host a lot of events to work with wounded warriors. So, but yes, I've been working with Natalie. She's great. Looking at doing a contract with her to do the presentations, design, and fundraising, so that, because they're expensive. I'm not going to tell you that they're not. They really are, and so I'm excited about the prospect of that. So that is a ticket item that you may see more information on. And now I'm going to give you the latest and last, I hope, anticipated completion of Taylor Field Park. I got this morning. We did have our punch list walkthrough on Tuesday and identified identified a lot of things that needed to be fixed. But this is 2 pages. The first, it just shows you where Alex, our engineer, said that anticipated completion is February 3rd, weather dependent. But the back list has the actual punch list items that we identified. And there is one, the restroom, we are supposed to get the flood elevation certificate by January the 23rd. And then everything with that building can be done. But I'll just take one down, pass it around. And, I mean, yes, Tom and I have talked about, his need for guys, and parks does encompass a lot. But with it was identified in our master plan, and recommended, not that you have to follow that, but it is recommended for the creation of a Parks and Recreation Maintenance Department. And basically that first recommendation is for the 22 to 23 fiscal year, which we are into right now. That recommendation is to hire a grounds maintenance supervisor, and then the second person to hire at the same time would be a grounds maintenance crew leader. And then in 24 budget, we would hire 2 more if we needed. So yes, the addition to Taylor Field, it is another park. It's like our right-of-ways and cemeteries. It grows at the same time they do. So, yeah, so Tom and I, yeah, we got some talk. But yes, I mean, we will either look at transferring a couple of guys, or, I mean, I can open open that up for people to apply. I would rather take people that have worked in the parks already and or have the experience, but yeah, we'll work that out and do whatever. So that you'll see that. That will be one of my things that I do push hard. And I would say this, it's kind of like a recommendation, but it's not. I know, and we've dealt with it with this contractor with Taylor Field. One of the things, and I know with the city, I think we have to take the lowest bid. And well, let me rephrase that. That is what Mr. Hargrove told me. So, and if we don't, then that's good, because it's not always the best thing. And I think we're seeing that through this Taylor Field project.
You need to take the low bidder, but we have a responsibility to document when they don't do a good job and put it in writing so that we can next time say, we're not taking you, and here's why. And I have a feeling we haven't been doing that. So I talked to the department heads, say, look, folks, if you're having a problem with a contractor, you got to document it in writing. And then when we go through this, at least we have, if we go to court over it, I can say, well, look, we've got documentation. Look what they did, X, Y, Z. I mean, we've had issues with water and sewer problems with some companies, but until we start documenting, then you're going to take the low bidder.
Yeah. And then, we've got the kayak launch coming up, so I don't know if they will make us, if DCM will make us bid it, in order to do the grant. We got 3 quotes, and we did send in the lowest, but I very much so trusted that contractor. He's a marine contractor. But I don't want us to have to rebid something. I mean, they sent us the quote in August. So, if that would help to solidify, we would get a contractor that the city feels good with. I don't know if that will happen.
I mean, we just had a situation like that with the dredging's materials. But you got to call them and see if they'll hold the bids. If they're not going to hold the bids, you're going to have to
Yeah.
re-quote it.
Yes.
Heather, I just had a question on your punch list. I've had just some citizens ask me, of course, about the dog park. And I didn't know, it says mow it, but it looks like some of it's uneven ground, and so are they going to level it?
Yes, that
and
big-
seed it and all of that, so.
Yes, that's what we talked about. In the large dog park area is a pretty big dip, and what that has done is left a hole at that part of the fence where a small dog could go under and get in the large dog park. So that was specifically addressed and specifically told to fix that. So that's what he said on the site. Well, this is how we'll do that. So yes, there will be more than just the mowing.
Anybody else for Parks and Rec? Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Cool, he's got a lot, he's got a lot to say, so. Development services in planning, building inspections, code enforcement. There's a wide open one right there, code enforcement. We've got a lot going on there. And then permitting. So you want the board to start first, and then Travis can follow up? Mr. Alton, you want to start?
I'm sorry, am I just making general comments? Okay.
Planning or building any, just like we've been doing with these topics.
No, I'm going to take a bye for right now.
Alderman Carroll?
So, code enforcement falls under this. And I think this is something we really need to address. A lot of stuff, but I've called on items and been told that code enforcement works as a complaint-based program right now, and it shouldn't be that way. It should be,
That's what it is in writing.
well,
So, but that's something we're going to bring up under right-of-way meeting.
yeah.
So
So this
just
is,
so you know.
yeah, this is definitely a topic that we need to discuss, because you can ride around and find hundreds of violations. So I'd like to see us move towards actually go out and find them and yeah, be proactive rather than reactive, and then also work on our right-of-way issue. The right-of-way is, continues to get encroached upon, and until we do something about it, that's going to be the case.
I don't think I have anything to add at this point.
I just appreciate the fact that we do have two planners now, that we're meeting the demand of our community. We have all these developments that are coming in. It takes time, as you know, to go through them. Some of them are very large. Some of them may not be as large, but every project that someone, or development, or everything that's brought to the city demands attention, whether it's massive or not. And so we want to provide great service, and the planning department it's got to be robust. So I appreciate, Travis, the work that you're doing and Mo's doing, and the planning board is You know, when the First Lady was doing the planning board 15 years ago, those were not long meetings, they were not complex meetings, and now you look at them and it's just a very busy time in Southport, so we need to be prepared for that. I agree with you in terms of Alderman Carroll, code enforcement is going to be a big issue, and that probably needs to be rewritten instead of just being a complaint-based. We need to, let's make our city look the way we want it to look, the beauty and the vision and the historic heritage and that type thing. Building inspections and permitting, we don't hear much about that, so it must be going well, so that's good. When you don't hear a complaint, must be doing okay. So, Alderman Lombardi?
Travis, would your department oversee subdivisions?
Yes.
Okay. I know in the past, if a subdivision was going in and they were, let's say, paving a road, that it was inspected after it was all done and not while it was being done. And I've seen large puddles after they paved in a subdivision road. And so your department would oversee it as it's being built?
Us and Tom and his folks together, working side by side, would make sure that that gets done.
Tom, you got a lot to do, don't you?
And certainly, that's where the engineering review on the front
Exactly.
end, before a single piece of dirt's ever turned on a site, making sure that the engineering is locked in.
Yeah, that's what I was concerned with. So you will be overseeing this on a daily or a couple times a week?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Travis. I wanted first to follow up, and I regret that Alderman Davis wasn't able to be with us today, because I was going to play off her suggestion to rename Development Services to reflect the real mission, which is planning. So I'm hoping that going forward we can call it the Planning Department rather than Development Services. And then I just had a few items. I know we've talked about this. Update the CAMA land use plan is in desperate need. It was adopted in 2014 with some minor revisions a couple of years ago, so that is in serious need of updating. We need to continue to review and update the UDO. Right now there are this many changes that we need. We need to complete the steps for the Historic Preservation Commission to come into fully operational, which Alderman Carroll has already mentioned. Also, we need to establish an entry corridor overlay district in addition to historic preservation. We first started working on this in 2017, and then the oxygen got pulled out of the room. And in order for us to also preserve our historic characters, our whole business corridor and entry corridors reflect that as well. So we need to do that. One of the things that I know your department essentially pays for itself because of through your fees and that sort of thing. It's typically how you do it, as you, and I've said this to you before, but I want to say it here, that as you look at those fees, make sure they're covering what you need. I know we're all excited that you are now a department of 2 planners, but I know that if you need additional help, then please identify that, because our future is in your hands. And whatever resources you need to be successful, we want to try to help you acquire those resources.
Yes, I just had a momentary thought process here. So Travis, you and I have talked about this before, stormwater, and you know of the specific issue that I'm talking about, that I'm very concerned about. And if we get this, I'm not familiar enough about the stormwater grant that we've applied for, or when we're going to get it, if we're going to get it, yada, yada. But if we were to get it, would that be enough money to actually do something with that stormwater program? Is that to build things, or is that to hire people to help us with it, or what could we do with that money?
Yeah,
believe the grant that we applied for is to do the study. So our consulting firm to come in and do a review of the whole city and develop a plan so that we can move forward with construction projects.
Thank you. So my next question, and we've talked about this a little bit already, about when a new development is being built and the road is being put in, and do we have the staff to provide enough time? If it's supposed to be X number of inches of packed sand, and X number of inches of asphalt A, and X number of inches of asphalt B, and it's got to be, you know, curved and yada, 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 that seems like a lot of visits to get all of that done. Do we have the staffing to do that, or is that something that we can hire a third party to help us through as we go through this gush of permits coming through?
We have some options there. This kind of goes back to what we could hire a third party to do that too.
Thank you.
Well,
Still
then,
getting used to that.
then I would ask you to at least consider that when we get to the budget part of your thing. What might that look like? How much might that cost? Because to try to get Tom to come out there to do that on top of all the other things that he's having and all the things that people are calling you all the time, maybe the two of you got it all down, but I'm just concerned going forward with the number of streets that might be being built, that it's almost a full-time thing for you guys to be doing that, and because there's so many aspects of it. And I'm not that I'm not sure, I'm positive we didn't do it well in the past. Okay? So moving forward, it has nothing to do with you guys. Moving forward, how do we make that better? And do we have, for code enforcement, is there a thing on the books that if the grass in your yard gets to X number of inches, that we can just come in and cut it and send you a bill? And do we do that?
I don't believe so, no.
I think we can. Because there are a number of, not a large number, but there are some places in the city that notoriously do not do that. And we get into this discussion about manpower to go do it, but if we're going to get reimbursed for it, then we just cut it and we send them a bill. And if they don't pay the bill, we put a lien on the property.
In my previous life as code enforcement, you have to first give notice, and then you wait, and then give notice again, and then we can move in and hire. We have to bid it out, hire somebody to come in, yes, then they have to pay.
You have to bid each cut out?
Yes, yes.
Wow. As opposed to the staff do it and we just charge the time for the staff.
An outsider, but I don't know how Tom's crew is ever going to be able to do that.
I was expecting that from you anyway, so.
The problem with that was actually billing them for time. That was, it was, how do you bill staff time, and where if it's a contractor, they commit,
I'm
yeah,
not,
so.
I'm not trying to dump it all on that group, but it seems very inefficient to do a bid for each yard as opposed to a bid for a year that, we have, any of these that come up, we might only use them twice in the year, but they charge us by the hour and we pay them.
Except if you can't find anybody for cemeteries, I don't think you'd find anybody for this.
Well, I'm just talking, there's lawn companies out there that might just do it because they got staff and they'll just bring, because it's so infrequently.
Oh, it's worth looking at, definitely, but the way that the statutes usually are written, it's just a pain in it, because you gotta notify them, and the next time it gets big, you gotta notify them again.
But if you live
How many
next to that place.
Oh, I get it. Oh, yeah, I get it.
How many complaints do we get?
It's,
Right. In what period of time?
That's all I have right now.
Do you want to
sure.
update us with
Well,
statements?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can just go down the list. Code enforcement, I fully agree that we should go proactive and we should be very transparent about going proactive. If that is the direction of the board, I don't know that one code enforcement officer is enough to adequately do that. And that also feeds into, and I know this is underway, but having a strong attorney at the end of the line. Obviously, our goal with code enforcement is compliance and voluntary compliance on the part of the person who finds themselves afoul of the UDO or the Code of Ordinances. But there's always going to be one that doesn't want to do that. And so if we're all bark and no bite when it comes to code enforcement, anybody who's out there is going to know that the city is, quite frankly, pushovers, and we're not going to fight it at the end. So having the attorney at the end of the line to seek those court judgments to compel compliance is really important.
You bring up a good point, because we're right in that process of hiring a lawyer. And while we talked about litigation, and I think in my mind, I was thinking big civil suits, yada, yada. Not you failed to do your, whatever it is you failed to do in your yard.
Right.
Which is, it still can run up a number of hours in the judicial system when they get over there and
Yes.
get postponed and yada, 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 yada.
It can. As far as the fees go, and this is something I dealt with quite a bit in my previous role because we were also a combined planning, permitting, and inspections department. Inspections revenue is by state law required to be used for the enforcement of the building code. So my department does fund itself partly. The inspections and permit, anything related to the building code. So that's Kylie and Tori. And since I supervise them, about half of me. But because Mo and Chris do not touch the building code, that revenue at least, and I went to the School of Government and went round and round with them over this. As of right now, the way statute is written, it cannot be used for planning or code enforcement. It's only building code. So looking at the revenue that was budgeted to be brought in, just the sheer revenue that was budgeted for this fiscal year to be brought in was more than $100,000 what the expenditures were for the department. And we're going to beat that revenue projection quite, the way it looks right now, probably by over $100,000. So from a budgeting standpoint, on the front end, just from a sheer administration standpoint, it would make sense to split the department in two and have one, right, not saying, I would not supervise both sides, but just having two lines or two groups, one for permitting and one for planning and code enforcement. It's just cleaner that way. And also, since we have to report those revenues and expenditures every year, new state law requirement that'll come into play in October, it's going to make that process so much easier. On the flip side, if we're bringing in more revenue than we're really allowed to use it on, I think a second building inspector and a second permit tech is a worthwhile investment. Part of that is Kylie, there's already days where Kylie is doing 23, 24, 25 inspections a day. And when some of those inspections are over an hour, you just can't do it. State law requires us to get those inspections done within 48 hours of them being requested. I know we've got some part-time folks who come in and help us, and I'm grateful for that, but Osprey Landing is coming. That's 200 homes just by itself. Oakton is 42. Highland Park's got another phase coming, plus all of this commercial stuff we're dealing with. We got the 30,000 square foot building on the agenda for the planning board tonight. We're going to need more help there. We're going to need more capacity in-house, full-time folks that we can depend on. And we have the revenue to pay for it. So. The other thing Alderman Mosteller brought up is the comprehensive plan. It was mentioned earlier that one of the internal strengths is civic engagement There is no better time to harness that than in a comprehensive plan process. We are ready to do it. They're not cheap. They're really not cheap. Talked to Brunswick County, they have that blueprint going on, and there were some of the smaller municipalities in Brunswick County that joined them. According to them, their consultant said that the same comprehensive plan for those smaller municipalities was going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $125,000. It's just what it takes these days to do, to do a plan to do it right, is what I mean. And from that plan, yes, I got a whole list in this notebook of UDO changes that need to be made. But a lot of the really substantial UDO changes come from that comp plan once it's done, because you can tie every single one of those changes you're making back to the public input that you received through the planning process. Plus, it helps with, just providing a direction for the long-range planning projects that need to occur throughout the city. So I certainly would anticipate bringing forward a budget request for a brand new comprehensive plan, not another update. This would be brand new. And hopefully we get it done within a year. Ideally, we would. So that's all I have at this point, but certainly.
So, applications for new projects that come in, those fees have to be spent on building inspections?
Applications for building permits. That's, just a straight up building permit for a house, mechanical, electrical, those fees have to be used for enforcement of those codes. If you're paying for an application for a rezoning or a preliminary plat, there's no restrictions on that. Hopefully it would stay within the planning department, but it doesn't have to. But it could. Yes, absolutely. But the vast majority of the revenue that we're bringing in is permit revenue, not planning revenue.
Thank you, Travis. And item E, public safety, which includes animal protective services, fire, EMS, and police. Alderman Alt, you want to start with that? Since you have so much expertise on that, you can get us started on that. In particular, the police and fire and EMS, that type thing.
Again, I'm going to wait for the board to go around, if that's okay with you, sir.
I said earlier that we need to focus on the space for our police department. I think that's important. And, I'm excited to see what we learn through this study that's being completed.
I wanted to ask a question about the fire fee. So I don't know if Chief Treadway, if you're the best person to answer it, or Bonnie or Melanie or something. What I think, and Rich, I think you're the one that's kind of brought this up before, but and I want to make sure that I understand it. Our current fire fee is maxed out. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The rate is maxed out. And what has to occur to increase that rate? We have to get approval from the state. Is that correct?
I think the county right now is doing a study on another way of doing the funding and come up with a different plan. So,
What the time frame is on that? Or
No, sir, not at this time.
Probably be a pretty long process. Yes, will we be okay next year, next budget year, at our current fire fee rate?
I believe the way it stands right now, yes, sir, I think that would be correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
In terms of, police, we definitely need a freestanding police department, no question about it. And it's time, and you have such a rich history of police chiefs and So I think that will be a wonderful tribute to them. It'll look great in our entry corridor that Mayor Pro Tem has talked about. And it's needed, and so this study will be very important. And then hiring the proper consultants in collaboration with the police department, the board, and staff. What is it that Southport's going to need for the next 10 to 50, 100 years? So I think that's exciting. In terms of our, fire, EMS, our first responders, God bless you, Battalion Chief. Let me tell you, not only are y'all doing that, I mean, the fire department hosted our Martin Luther King celebration, had our Board of Aldermen meeting there, and the wonderful events you have at Christmas, light up the night. I mean, these are just, and that board was so farsighted in building that fire station. I know there was a lot of criticism initially that they built one. Oh, why do you need one that large and that type of thing? Well, it's not just for Southport, but it's a fire district. And again, the rich history of the fire department in Southport and our volunteers. So from my point of view, we support the work that you're doing, and whatever that our first responders need, we need to make sure they have that, to be successful. In terms of, our local EMS, why do we have them? Well, you think about the football player, Mr. Hamill, who collapsed on that football field. If he had collapsed anywhere else, he would not have survived. I mean, they had everything they needed right there. So with our fire and EMS close by, prepared, ready to go, they can get there within hopefully a time frame to save a life. Time saves lives, and so proud of what they're doing. And Animal Protective Services, I mean, God bless you. I see all the dog bites that I've ever want to see in a career, and to take care of that is and the many other things that have to do with that. So making sure that that department has the funding and the equipment and services that they need. So very pleased with our public safety, and thank you for all that you do.
I don't have any questions at this time, but I do support a new police station, a separate building, whenever we can do it.
Animal Protective Services, I'm grateful. And as we go forward, considering if you need ordinance updates and that sort of thing, because that also is a living document as things evolve for you. So just know that we're open to that sort of conversation. Good. And then fire, of course, and police, the building conversation that Robert initiated, we're all in support of, I feel like. And I had just a question for Ralph, if just a budget question, looking at this year's sort of 6-month thing. It looked like you only had 25% of your part-time salaries left. I don't know if this is accurate or got coded wrong.
That's
but
correct. So it's not a fault of anybody, but, we started the EMS budget this year, and I think it wasn't coded correctly going into the year, so all of it was being pulled out of the fire budget, and we're working with Melanie and Angie right now to try to get all those lines squared away, so.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Great job.
Well, Chief, you and I have spoken, and you know that I think it's almost, I think it's unanimous that we're looking for a new building for you, and so that's all going forward. For the fire department, did we budget enough for the EMS part?
Until we get everything squared away, sir, we won't really know where we stand at, but it looks like we're moving.
And just for a little historical, I think we would give you $35,000, and it's like $250,000 to run the program. Okay, so I'm assuming this year we might be off a couple of dollars one way or the other, so I look forward to, when we get to that line item, to having that discussion and make sure that we have the right amount of money in there. Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Bonnie, as we think about this, and I don't know what time, what kind of time frame we're talking about with regards to having a new dedicated police station. But the other part of that conversation, I think, is what do we do with the space at Town Hall that's been vacated once that happens?
Well, the monies that you designated at the last meeting that they're combined, it's both, look at both of those studies. So it's to build them, let's get some design, let's get some costs, let's get some possible locations, and then meanwhile, whichever company will be doing our side, how do we spread out? What can we do? I know Kate needs a little bit more space, so can our storage that's over there get moved, so it's all kinds of juggling. Because again, if you're looking at City Hall, say 20 years down the road, I don't think that building does it because of growth.
Doesn't do it now.
Huh?
It doesn't do it now.
I know, and even, because they're not in that big of a space.
No,
So it's not like we're gonna inherit that much space, so.
My question would be, well, and you're getting a company to do it, but the planning department requires a lot of space. Maybe they could come out of there and it'd be more of administrative.
Yeah, it's just, sometimes when you start separating departments, the communication disappears. I've seen it happen with police departments too, where all of a sudden they feel isolated, they don't know what's going on citywide, so you have to be a little careful of separating out departments. Go ahead, Chief. I'm
I
sorry.
just wanted to apologize for my informal appearance. I'm just coming in from the Chiefs Conference, but I was able to talk with 4 different firms there at the conference, so they should have some information back to us. I can give the manager to try to get that process going, and so, but I appreciate your support for a new building. I didn't come out this trying to get a new building. We were just trying to get more space, and talking with Melanie, her department shares downstairs, so we're running out of space, kind of busting at the seams. So we've had to, some of y'all probably remember what the upstairs looked like when I came in 2018. We've already added layers of security and protection, us from the public from us, and also just the mandates because we are housing evidence and that kind of thing upstairs. So we're looking forward to that, and I think we already have a site. I've been talking with Chief Drew, so we possibly already have a site here in town, so that would be helpful as well, but that'll have to certainly come before you folks. But do support that, and so thank you very much.
When you're talking about the police department, is there an I'm just throwing an idea. I'm
Yes,
not,
sir.
We have a very big issue with meeting rooms.
Yes.
Just a meeting room for an alderman to meet with somebody. I have to do it in a
Yes,
coffee
sir.
shop.
Yes, sir.
And I realize that a meeting room that would be attached to your building would have to be separate and distinct, you can't get from one to the other.
Right.
But I don't know if there's a way to look at that and add something, a couple of meeting rooms if we wanted to do, even if we had a big, long emergency. So we have the
Right.
fire department.
Yes, sir.
And that's the incident command place, and plus it's the fire department.
Right.
If your staff was back in the place working with other people trying to do long-range planning and stuff, and then
Right.
feed you the information there.
Yes, sir.
I want to make sure that we have enough room for everybody to do
Yes, sir.
both the day-to-day operations and the one-off big one, because obviously there was a lot of thought put into the fire department.
Yes, sir.
You
Yeah,
know,
that started a long years
130
back
mile an
when I-
hour wind ain't going to knock that bad boy
No,
down.
that's going to be there. You don't have to, I think you're pretty good there. We
Yeah.
can all hide out there and come out when it's over, kind of like the Ark, I believe, of Southport. And I was fortunate enough, I was a young fireman lieutenant. Yes, yes. We can send the Dove out at the end and check it out and come back. But we definitely want to do the long-range planning of that. And some of the plans that we've already kind of looked at accommodate that, because we are a very community-oriented police department. So we want to be able to, as the fire department does, it's good to have that rich history. As the mayor said, we work hand in hand. So we've already thought about an idea to have like a training room or something separate off the lobby where you could come in and do those things, a large space, maybe a little bit bigger than this, where we wanted to do like citizens academies or host things that would be done. And also, yes, sir. So we'll definitely hit the ground running with that. We've already got some ideas, and so we're excited, but and we appreciate your support of our police department. We've come a long way, so I'm trying to put together somewhat of a, I want to come before y'all at some point in a couple months to kind of bring you up to speed on where we are and just how far we've come kind of thing. I've had a lot of citizens ask about that, but I'm proud of what the men and women of our department have been doing. I'm just blessed to lead that force. So we don't want to get you up to date on that. So again, thank you for your support, and we're open for anything you want to throw our way. So thank you.
I got one more question.
Come on, sir. Yes.
Can you talk to us about, you asked for additional police
Yes.
in our last budget, and
Yes.
did you hire them? Have you been able
Well,
to?
unfortunately, no. We're very much struggling to get recruits right now. We still have 2 openings, but I think we have a one recruit getting ready to come on board. We're getting ready to start that interview next week, but that's a problem across the country. Just within the police departments here in our county, I think there's about 5 or 6 that are 2 and 3 and 4 short. So the sheriff's office, I talked to or heard them reporting the other day, there are several short in different divisions, but law enforcement kind of has a black cloud over it right now. People are not kind of jumping in the ring to do that anymore. And also being a unique town like we are, it's hard to get, young recruits because we don't have a lot of variety of moving, and we don't have, K-9 teams and SWATs, stuff like that. So some of the folks that we get have a combination of experience and a little bit of age already, which is good, but and we do have some younger recruits, but they kind of have to want to be attracted to, kind of what we have to offer. So we're working on a retention and a way to get out ahead of that and try to bring in some folks. So we're working with our media team here with the city and some other things. Got some ideas at the conference this week about that, and network with smaller police chiefs this week. So try to get out ahead of that. Yeah. So if y'all want some part-time work, we can pick y'all right up. So, but yes, come on.
More importantly, do we need bullets?
One, you get one bullet. We'll start you off with one there. Yeah, so, but thank y'all again so much. We appreciate it.
Any further questions for the chief? No guns, no bullets, board. Okay, all right, thank you for that. Item H, summary, city manager.
Thanks, John. Out of today's outcomes, we're going to take this list, we're going to take all the information you gave us, we're going to solidify it. I will bring it back to you probably at your February board meeting for a formal adoption. We are going to end up doing press releases, websites, social media. Everybody knows these are going to be your priorities, not just for the budget, but for a long-range visit. And we would then update quarterly. We'll come up with timelines, the whole bit. And we'll also, I think it's always important to distribute them to all the staff, not just department heads, so everybody understands where we're kind of heading. And again, it helps with putting together the budget. So with that, I cannot thank you enough. I found it productive. I hope the department heads found it productive. And here's how I'm going to end this. So I told you I wasn't going to share what the department heads came up with, but I will now. But most of it, we've talked about a lot of it today. We got 2 over here, but these are some of the things they came up with, but I think you're pretty much on the same path. But the last thing is not rescue trip, it's rescue truck. Although some of us could use a rescue trip. It's a rescue truck, sorry. Yes. So anyways, we can discuss this. Just so you know, during budgeting, I don't put in any requests for new people. We put them to the side. We figure out how much they're going to cost us, and then I prioritize, and then you decide what you want to, if you want to even put anything back in. So I think that's it. We're all tired. You guys have been awesome this week. I appreciate your time.
City manager, and my remarks are 60 seconds. Thank you all for being here today. This was really just again, another excellent day in Southport. We move our city forward in the best way possible. A lot of great information and ideas today, and you see where we've moved some projects forward and some projects need to be pushed further, and we have new projects. So let's think about the big 4, the public health and safety of our citizens, our historic preservation, how do we protect our culture, our heritage, our unique neighborhoods, and how do we enhance the quality of life, preservation of the human spirit for our citizens. So thank you. Board comments? Mayor.
Thank everybody for their conversation today. It's good, and we look forward to working on it again.
Yep. We just keep moving forward. Thank you so much.
Have much, just thanks for everybody. It's a great day.
Yeah, I'd like to say thank you to staff. I think y'all have done an awesome job. This has been a great first year for me, getting to know everybody, and I think that one of the things I would like for us to communicate to staff is that we support you guys and we appreciate you, and you know, we support Bonnie and what she's doing. So thank you.
For the staff, there's not one of these times that I don't walk away with like 12 different things that I learned from one of these meetings from you. So I thank everybody for that.
So I will entertain a motion to adjourn. We almost made it by 4. Mr. Lombardi, and a second by Alderman Carroll. Any further discussion? All in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.